I never thought I'd be the guy standing frozen in his own backyard, garden hose dripping water onto my bare feet, unable to move or speak because my 50-year-old neighbor had just caught me doing something I couldn't explain away. But here I am telling you this story, and I promise you what happened next changed everything. I thought I knew about loneliness, about connection, and about the walls we build around our hearts without even realizing it. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Daniel Reyes, and at 38 years old I had pretty much accepted that my life would be defined by two things: my 7-year-old daughter Sophia and the small landscaping business I ran out of my truck. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Phoenix, the son of a Mexican immigrant father who taught me everything about hard work and an Irish-American mother who taught me everything about stubbornness. Both traits had served me well and terribly in equal measure. 3 years ago, my wife decided that suburban motherhood wasn't the adventure she'd signed up for. She left on a Tuesday morning right after dropping Sophia at school with nothing but a note that said she needed to find herself. Last I heard, she'd found herself in Portland with a yoga instructor named something ridiculous. I stopped keeping track, so there I was, a single dad navigating the impossible maze of homework help, packed lunches, parent-teacher conferences, and trying to keep my business afloat while also trying to remember if I'd paid the electric bill. Most nights I fell asleep on the couch with the television murmuring in the background, too exhausted to even make it to my own bed, and then she moved in next door. Her name was Catherine Walsh, and she was nothing like what I expected when I saw the moving truck pull up that Saturday morning in late March. I'd assumed it would be another young family, that neighborhood was full of them, or maybe a retired couple downsizing from somewhere bigger. Instead, I watched as a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, climbed out of a silver sedan, stretched her long legs, and surveyed the property with the kind of quiet confidence that made me immediately look away. She was stunning, genuinely heart-stoppingly beautiful in a way that felt almost intimidating. Tall, maybe 5 foot n, with shoulder-length honey blonde hair streaked with natural silver that she clearly made no attempt to hide. Her skin was fair, lightly freckled across her nose and cheekbones, and her eyes, I wouldn't notice this until later, were the pale gray blue of winter sky. She moved with the easy grace of someone who'd been beautiful her whole life, but had somehow managed not to become insufferable about it. I found out from the neighborhood gossip network, specifically from Mrs. Patterson 2 doors down, who knew everything about everyone, that Catherine was a recently divorced professor of art history at the local university, that she had no children, and that she'd bought the house outright. Independent type. Mrs. Patterson had said with a slight disapproval that told me she'd already decided Catherine was probably difficult, keeps to herself. For the first 2 months, Catherine and I exchanged nothing more than polite waves and the occasional nice day, isn't it? Over the fence. She worked in her garden in the early mornings, wore flowing linen, clothes that somehow looked elegant, even covered in dirt, and had a habit of reading on her back patio in the evenings with a glass of wine. Not that I noticed, not that I ever watched, except I did. I watched more than I should have, more than I was comfortable admitting, even to myself. Here's the thing about being a single parent that nobody tells you. The loneliness doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in slowly, like water finding cracks in a foundation. You're so busy being everything for your child that you don't notice how long it's been since someone asked how you were doing. You don't realize that the only adult conversations you've had in weeks have been about invoice payments or whether Sophia needs new shoes. And then one night you're standing at your kitchen window washing dishes, and you see your beautiful neighbor laughing at something on her phone, and the ache of wanting to be close to another person hits you so hard you have to grip the counter to stay standing. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was just tired, just overwhelmed, just going through a phase. I told myself that Catherine Walsh was completely out of my league, that she probably dated university professors and sophisticated European men, not dirt under his fingernails, landscapers with a kid and too much baggage to carry. But the watching continued small glances that I pretended were accidental, finding reasons to be in my backyard when I knew she'd be in hers, timing my morning coffee to coincide with her garden time so I could catch a glimpse of her through the kitchen window. It was harmless. I told myself it wasn't like I was doing anything wrong. And then came the Saturday that changed everything. If you're still with me, I need you to hit that like button and drop a comment, telling me if you've ever been caught doing something you couldn't explain. Because I swear what I'm about to tell you is the most embarrassing moment of my life, and I need to know I'm not alone here. It was early June and the Arizona heat had already become oppressive. Sophia was at her grandmother's for the weekend. My mom loved having her, and I tried to give them that time together whenever I could. I'd spent the morning doing yard work, and by noon, I was drenched in sweat and desperate for water. I just turned on the garden hose to fill Sophia's little plastic pool. She liked having it ready when she came home when I heard Catherine's back door open. I glanced up, just a quick look, I swear, just to see if she needed anything. She was wearing a sundress, a white sundress that was somehow both modest and the most devastatingly attractive thing I'd ever seen. Her hair was down, still damp, from what I assumed was a shower, and she was carrying a book and a glass of something cold. She didn't see me at first, didn't know I was watching as she settled into her pio chair and tilted her face up toward the sun, and I stared. I stared like a man who'd forgotten what beauty could do to a person. I stared for way too long, long enough that the hose overflowed the little pool and started flooding the grass, and I didn't even notice. She must have felt my eyes on her because she turned slowly and looked directly at me. Our gazes locked. My brain screamed at me to look away, to wave casually, to do something, anything. But I was frozen, completely and utterly frozen, standing there with a garden hose overflowing onto my feet, caught in the most obvious act of staring that anyone had ever committed. Catherine tilted her head slightly. A small smile played at the corner of her lips. And then in a voice as calm and casual as if she were commenting on the weather, she said, "You know, Daniel, if you want to look, you can just ask." I think I stopped breathing. I know I dropped the hose. She set her book down and stood up, walking toward the low fence that separated our properties with a grace that made my chest tight. I wanted to run. I wanted to apologize. I wanted the earth to open up and swallow me whole. I started, but my voice came out as a croak. I cleared my throat. I was just the pool. The pool that's been full for the past 5 minutes. She raised an eyebrow, and there was something in her expression that I couldn't read. Amusement, irritation, disappointment that her creepy neighbor had turned out to be exactly as creepy as she'd suspected. "I'm sorry," I managed. I shouldn't have, God. I'm so sorry, Catherine. That was completely inappropriate." And I stopped. She held up a hand and I fell silent immediately. "Take a breath. You look like you're about to pass out." I took a breath. It didn't help much. "Sit down," she said, gesturing to the lawn chairs on my patio. "Before you fall down." I sat. I had no idea what else to do. Catherine walked to the gate in the fence, opened it, and stepped into my yard like she had every right to be there, which I suppose she did. I'd essentially invited her by acting like a complete fool. She sat in the chair across from me, crossed her legs, and studied me with those pale gray eyes. "So," she said finally, "how long has this been going on?" "I don't know what you're, Daniel." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I'm 50 years old. I've been married, divorced, and had more than my share of attention from men who thought they were being subtle. I know when someone's watching me. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I sat there, my face burning, completely unable to form a coherent thought. This was not how I'd expected this conversation to go. I'd expected anger, maybe threats to call the police, or at least demand that I never look in her direction again. I had not expected calm questioning like she was a therapist and I was a patient presenting an interesting case. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," I said finally. I stopped, took another breath. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and apparently I've forgotten how to act like a functioning adult around you. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised. That transformed her face into something even more stunning. "Well," she said, "that was not what I expected you to say." "What did you expect?" "Some mumbled excuse about the fence or the landscaping or how the sun was in your eyes." She shook her head. "Definitely not honesty. Would you prefer the excuse?" "No." She smiled and something in my chest loosened slightly. "I think I prefer the honesty. It's refreshing." We sat there in awkward silence for another moment. I became acutely aware of the fact that I was still dripping with sweat. My hair was probably a disaster, and I was wearing my oldest work shirt with a hole in the collar. Meanwhile, she looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine about graceful aging. "I should let you get back to your book," I said finally, starting to stand again. I'm really sat down. "Daniel," I sat. "Tell me something," she said, leaning forward slightly. "When I want the truth. When you look at me, what do you see?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I asked. When you look at me, really look at me, what do you see?" "An older woman who's let herself go. Someone's mother. A cautionary tale about where life takes you after 40. I stared at her, genuinely confused by the question. "I see you. I see someone who seems comfortable in her own skin. Someone who reads books in the sunshine and doesn't seem to care what anyone thinks. Someone who tends her garden like it matters, like growing things is important." I paused, my cheeks heating again. "And yes, someone who's incredibly beautiful, but it's not just about how you look. It's how you exist. You seem peaceful. Like you figured something out that the rest of us are still struggling with." Catherine's expression shifted into something I couldn't quite read. She blinked rapidly and I realized with a shock that there were tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I didn't mean to." No, she held up a hand again. No, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just, she laughed a little shakily this time. It's been a very long time since anyone looked at me and saw something other than their own assumptions. Before I could respond, a car pulled into my driveway. My mother's familiar blue sedan with Sophia's face pressed against the back window, waving frantically. Daddy! Grandma brought me home early because I missed you. Catherine stood up quickly, wiping at her eyes. I should go. You have weight? I stood too, heart pounding for reasons I didn't fully understand. Would you? Yes, she said softly, and her smile made my chest ache. Whatever the question is, yes, we can. And then she was gone, slipping back through the gate just as Sophia came barreling around the corner of the house and launched herself into my arms. Now, before I continue this story, I need you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because what happened next is something I still think about every single day. The following weeks were complicated, beautiful and terrifying and complicated. Catherine and I started having coffee together in the mornings on whichever patio was more convenient. At first we talked about safe things, the neighborhood, the weather, her work at the university, my landscaping projects, but slowly, incrementally, the conversations went deeper. She told me about her marriage, how she'd spent 2 years with a man who slowly made her feel invisible, how he'd criticized everything from her appearance to her cooking to her career, until she stopped believing she had any value outside of being his wife when she finally left him at 48 years old. She didn't even recognize herself in the mirror. I'd spent so long seeing myself through his eyes. She said one morning, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug that I'd forgotten I had my own eyes to see with. These past 2 years have been about learning who I actually am, what I actually like, what I actually want, and what do you want? I asked. She looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. I'm still figuring that out. I told her about my own marriage, about the shock of being left, about the struggle of being a single parent while running a business, about the nights I lay awake wondering if I'd ever be enough for Sophia, ever be able to give her the kind of stability she deserved. You know what I see when I watch you with her? Catherine said. You watch me. I tried to make it a joke, but my voice caught. Fair's fair, she said with a slight smile. And what I see is a father who would move mountains for his daughter. The way you look at her, Daniel, like she's the center of the universe, like nothing else matters. That's not something you can fake. Sometimes I feel like I'm barely holding it together. Everyone feels that way. The difference is you're still holding it together. You're still showing up. Do you have any idea how rare that is? The banter between us grew easier with time, touched with something flirtatious that neither of us quite acknowledged. She'd tease me about my terrible taste in music, and I'd tease her about her habit of leaving half-drunk cups of tea all over her patio. We'd argue about books neither of us had read and movies neither of us had seen, inventing positions just for the pleasure of the debate. But underneath all of it was something else, an awareness of each other that made the air feel charged, the way her hand would brush against mine when she passed me my coffee, the way I'd find myself leaning closer to hear even though she wasn't speaking, softly, the way we'd both look away too quickly when we realized we'd been staring. Sophia adored her. Catherine had a gift with children. Patient and playful and genuinely interested in whatever weird thing Sophia was currently obsessed with. They'd spend hours in Catherine's garden identifying plants and insects, making up stories about the flowers. Catherine taught her to press leaves and petals in old books, a project that took over our kitchen table for weeks. She's wonderful. My mother said one afternoon watching Catherine help Sophia make fairy houses in the backyard. Smart, kind, beautiful, and the way she looks at you. Mom, I'm just saying it would be nice to see you happy. I am happy. You're surviving. That's not the same thing. She wasn't wrong. But the difference between Catherine and me felt insurmountable. She was educated, sophisticated, worldly. I was a guy who got dirt under his fingernails for a living. She'd traveled to Europe, lectured at conferences, published papers on art and beauty and meaning. The most meaningful thing I'd published was a Yelp response, defending my business against a customer who was angry I wouldn't mow his lawn in the rain. And there was the age thing. 12 years wasn't a lifetime, but it felt significant. She'd lived a whole adult life before I'd even graduated high school. When she'd been getting married the first time, I'd been learning to drive. I told myself it didn't matter, that we were just friends, that whatever was between us wasn't anything that needed definition. But the truth was harder to avoid. I was falling in love with her, and I had no idea what to do about it. The crisis came, as crises often do, from an unexpected direction. It was late August, and the summer heat had finally started to break. Sophia had started second grade, which meant mornings were a chaos of backpacks and forgotten lunches and last-minute homework searches. Catherine and I had settled into a routine, coffee on weekends, occasional dinners when Sophia was at my mom's, long conversations on the porch, while Sophia played in the yard, and then my ex-wife called. Michelle hadn't been in contact for nearly a year. The last conversation we'd had was a negotiation about Christmas visitation that she'd ultimately backed out of anyway, but now suddenly she wanted back in. She was returning to Phoenix. She'd done the work. She wanted to be part of Sophia's life again. And part of your life, she said, her voice softer than I remembered. I made a mistake, Daniel, a huge mistake. But I'm different now. I want to try again. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, unable to speak. Through the window, I could see Catherine in her garden and Sophia sitting on the fence between our yards, chattering happily about something while Catherine pretended to be shocked and amazed. Daniel, are you there? I'm here, I said slowly. This is a lot, Michelle. You can't just disappear for 3 years and then I know I can't expect you to trust me overnight, but can we at least talk? Can I see her? Every instinct I had screamed no, but this was Sophia's mother. This was the woman I'd once loved enough to marry, enough to build a life with. Could I really deny my daughter a relationship with her mother just because I was angry? I'll think about it, I said finally. I'll call you back. I didn't tell Catherine about the call. I'm not sure why. Maybe because I didn't want to see her reaction. Didn't want to face whatever that reaction might mean. Instead, I carried the weight of it alone, turning it over in my mind like a stone I couldn't stop touching. Michelle came back the following week. She looked different, calmer, more grounded with a serenity that made me suspicious. She had a job now, a real one, working at a physical therapy clinic downtown, an apartment of her own. A whole life that didn't look like the chaos she'd left behind. She wanted to take Sophia for dinner. I agreed because I couldn't figure out how to refuse without being cruel. I sat in my empty house that evening, and for the first time in months, I didn't have Catherine's company to distract me. She was at a conference. She'd be gone for 5 days. Those 5 days were the longest of my life. Sophia came back from dinner with Michelle confused but oddly happy. Mom said she missed me, she reported. She said she made some bad choices, but she's working on being better. What does that mean, Daddy? Working on being better? I pulled her into my arms and held her tight. It means she's trying, baby. It means she loves you and she's trying. Michelle started coming around more. Dinners became a regular thing. Then she started picking Sophia up from school on Tuesdays, taking her to the park, buying her ice cream. Sophia blossomed under the attention, starved for her mother in ways I hadn't even realized. And I watched and I waited and I wondered what the right thing to do actually was. When Catherine came back from her conference, something was different. She pulled into her driveway, and I waved from my porch, but she just nodded tersely and went inside. The next morning she didn't come out for coffee. I told myself she was jet-lagged busy, catching up on work. But when I finally saw her 3 days later, her expression was cool in a way I hadn't seen since those first distant months. Is everything okay? I asked. Everything's fine. Her tone suggested otherwise. Catherine, I heard you have a visitor, she said, and her voice was carefully neutral. I saw her picking up Sophia from school last week. Mrs. Patterson was very informative about who she is. Damn Mrs. Patterson and her informative nature. My ex-wife, I said. Michelle, she wants to be part of Sophia's life again, and yours. I hesitated a beat too long. Catherine's expression flickered, something painful and quickly hidden. I see, she said quietly. No, you don't. Nothing is. Daniel, you don't owe me any explanations. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We're neighbors. We're friends. What you do with your life is your business. She went back inside before I could say anything else. That night I lay awake, until 30 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, understanding finally what I'd been too afraid to admit. I didn't want Michelle back. I didn't want the life we'd had before. What I wanted was on the other side of a wooden fence, and I was watching it slip away because I was too scared to reach for it. At dawn, I made a decision. I need you all to stay with me here, because this is where everything came together. And if this story is touching you at all, please leave a comment below and share this video with someone who needs to hear about second chances. I knocked on Catherine's door at 7 in the morning, which was either brave or stupid, depending on how you looked at it. She answered in a silk robe, her hair messy from sleep, her expression guarded. Daniel, it's 7 in the morning, I know. I'm sorry. I need to say something, and if I don't say it now, I'm gonna lose my nerve. She studied me for a long moment, then stepped back. Come in. Her house smelled like lavender and old books. There were paintings on every wall, mostly landscapes, and stacks of papers on every surface. It felt like her elegant and warm and slightly chaotic. Coffee? She asked. No, I mean yes, eventually. But first, I need you to hear this. She leaned against her kitchen counter and crossed her arms. I'm listening. Michelle wants me back. I said she wants to try again. For Sophia's sake, for our sake, for whatever it is she thinks we had. Catherine's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes dimmed. And what do you want? I want you. The words hung in the air between us. Catherine's arms slowly uncrossed, fell to her sides. I want you, I repeated, stepping closer. I've wanted you since the first time I saw you stepping out of that car. I've wanted you through every coffee we've shared, every conversation we've had, every moment I've watched Sophia fall in love with you almost as hard as I have. Daniel, I know there are reasons it doesn't make sense. I know I'm younger than you and I don't have a fancy degree and my life is messy in ways that might never be clean. But I also know that when I'm with you, I feel like the best version of myself. I feel like maybe all the hard stuff was worth it because it brought me here to you. Stop. Her voice was shaking. Please stop. I stopped. You can't just. She pressed a hand to her mouth and I realized she was crying. Do you have any idea how long it's been since anyone wanted me like that? Since anyone saw me as anything other than someone past her prime, past her usefulness, past her. I crossed the distance between us in 2 steps and kissed her. It was impulsive, probably inappropriate, definitely terrifying, but she kissed me back, her hands coming up to grip my shoulders, like she was drowning and I was solid ground. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I'm 50 years old, she whispered. I can't give you. I mean, if you wanted more children, I probably can't. I have Sophia. She's enough. She's more than enough. I cubed her face in my hands. What I want is you. Just you. For however long you'll have me. You're absolutely insane, she said. But she was smiling through her tears. You realize that probably, but I'm also completely sure. She kissed me again, softer this time, sweeter. And in that moment, all the loneliness of the past 3 years, all the exhaustion, and the doubt and the feeling that I would never be enough, it all melted away. It was replaced by something warm, something bright, something that felt terrifyingly like hope. Telling Michelle was hard. She cried, then got angry, then cried again. But in the end, she accepted it, not gracefully, but definitely. She could still be part of Sophia's life. I told her I wanted that for our daughter, but our marriage was over, truly and finally over, and I was moving forward. She seems lovely. Michelle said finally, her voice tight, your neighbor. I hope she makes you happy. She does. Then I suppose that's what matters. Sophia was the easiest to tell. So Miss Catherine is your girlfriend now? She asked, her eyes bright with excitement. Something like that? Does that mean she's gonna stay? I looked at Catherine, who was standing in our kitchen watching this conversation with a tenderness that made my heart ache. I hope so, baby. I really hope so. Good. Sophia nodded firmly, because I think you need someone to take care of you. You're kind of a mess, Daddy. Catherine burst out laughing. I couldn't even argue. That was 3 years ago. Catherine and I got married last spring in her backyard garden with Sophia as flower girl and my mother, crying happy tears the whole time. It's not a conventional love story, the single dad and the older neighbor finding each other across a fence and through a 100 morning coffees. But it's ours. Catherine still teaches at the university. I still run my landscaping business, though it's bigger now with employees and actual office space. Sophia is 10 years old, too smart for her own good, and has informed us that she wants to be either a botanist or a Broadway star, depending on the day. And every morning, without fail, Catherine and I have coffee on the patio, her patio now, or hours since the fence came down, a long time ago. We talk about everything and nothing. We laugh at jokes that aren't funny to anyone else. We exist in the kind of easy intimacy that I once thought was only for other people. Sometimes when the light is right, I catch myself staring at her. She'll look up from her book, catch me, looking and smile. If you want to look, she says, echoing that first impossible conversation, you can just ask. Maybe I just want to look forever. That could be arranged. Here's what I've learned. If you're still with me at the end of this story, love doesn't always come when you expect it. It doesn't always look the way you thought it would. Sometimes the person meant for you is someone you never would have imagined. Someone who challenges every assumption you had about what your life would be. But if you're lucky, and I mean truly, unexpectedly, miraculously lucky, you get a second chance. You get someone who looks at you and sees not just who you are, but who you could be. You get someone who isn't afraid to ask the hard questions or to answer them honestly. You get someone who makes even the difficult days feel like they're leading somewhere good. So, if you're out there feeling lonely, feeling like maybe love has passed you by, don't give up. Keep your eyes open. Look at the person next to you. The one you might have overlooked, the one who doesn't fit the story you told yourself about how your life was supposed to go. Because sometimes the best love stories start with the most unexpected words. If you want to look, just ask. I want to hear from you now. Where are you watching from today? Drop your country in the comments. I read every single one and I love knowing that this story reached people all around the world. If this video touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another story. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's never too late for a new beginning.